We've broken it down a little bit by some of their category rankings. We start to sort of get beneath the story a little bit, and we start seeing rankings in sort of the bottom half of that list that are, again, not bad, sort of top third. And these are significant cities throughout North and South America, but you know, we've obviously listed them in some order. And by the way, the cost effectiveness one is primarily because of the Central and South American cities whose underlying cost of doing business is significantly lower. They are the top 20 cities in this list.
Are we low compared to the North American cities too on that?
Yeah, I mean,
they're
for
only
68
right.
out of 76 we are, and I mean, it's a simple fact that the cost effectiveness in terms of things like construction, for instance, which is pretty well known, we're pretty high up in terms of those costs, and that affects this kind of ranking. For me, the more worrisome ones are the three above it. I think our business friendliness rankings absolutely need to improve. That's at the core of why businesses do what they do in a given place. It's about confidence. It's about the willingness to take risks in a particular geography.
Do you know where we're weak in that one?
You know, I don't, because I haven't gotten in under these numbers into the details of the rankings, but I think that's something we want to be doing.
Let me answer this question. I mean, we have this slide, you have the measurements, you have a bunch of the criteria, the judging criteria, the sheet that you put together here. So I mean, there are any number of, I'm assuming, these kinds of rankings by any number of magazines, organizations, et cetera, et cetera. Was there a particular reason that the FDI was picked for this particular measurement?
I think because they have a fairly extensive set of criteria. They have a good reputation as well. So taking the two together, we thought that this was a reasonable measure. Obviously, you know, like U.S. News and World Report's college rankings, these things are all imperfect measures, and they all are approximations of some reality. But this one, because of the number of criteria and their reputation, struck us as a reasonable one to put up there.
I mean, I'm not tremendously surprised that a New York or Chicago, first and third largest cities in the United States, would be ranked high, although that might also lead you to think that Los Angeles should be up there as well. So when you look at those cities, and I mean, what I'd like you to do is to take a look at the why behind that. Why are they kind of first and second? And then, I'm not asking you to do a site visit, but I mean, even in the 5th and 6th spots with Atlanta and Montreal, which is in Canada, unlike Austin, what will it take to get into at least the top 10? And I see you have a bit of a target over there, which, of course, from my perspective, is much too long a period of time. This judging criteria, I mean, there must be 50 some odd things on here, but it would be very, very helpful to get some report back as to why we think, or whatever the analysis is, cities that are right up there at the top, how that happened, and then in the next kind of middle group, I mean, by population and size, we're generally in the middle of most rankings about most things. So there's really no reason that we shouldn't be able to break into the top 10 pretty soon.
Okay.
Alan, do you know if they do this on an annual basis, or do they do it every few years? Because I'm sure that sort of things don't change massively on a year-to-year basis.
I don't know. Kat, do you?
They do it
It's annual?
every 2 years.
Every 2 years?
2 years. Yeah, it'd be tough to do this on
And is there
Right, that's what I was
contact
thinking.
with them, or, I mean, are they just kind of blow into town, sight unseen, do what they do,
If there's a
talk to them
contact,
whoever
it
they talk
hasn't been
to?
through Commerce. Has it? Yeah.
What kind of,
Commerce, yeah.
do they give you kind of access to any of the backup information so you can tell how they got to their rankings? No, it just
Yeah,
kind of
they're
comes
kind of
out.
closed
They
mouth
give you a
about
survey, and then you give them the answers back,
Yeah.
and they compute it sort of in a black box that they don't share because it's their.
this. That's why we don't have a number 11, because they won't reveal
Number 11.
number 11.
We've started conversations with them, and I think we can see in the next 2 years what we can do and what other information. It's, you know, they have to be able to work with us.
we know?
No, this is the first
This is
time
the first time
we
we've done it?
participated, right?
So we were unranked last time.
We're doing well.
Along with the other sentences.
But I think, sorry, my one comment, I think it is a good measure also because it does include those cities in North America and South America. And then back to Alan's sort of opening remark about, we need to be competitive in the global world, not just in America.
Although I would say that, I would, if it were up to me, I would probably parse the geography a little differently. More looking at particularly some of the European cities that I think we actually are in some ways in direct competition with.
We can look into that.
I hear you, but I think increasingly it would be clearly to our detriment not to pay attention to South America.
I'm not suggesting not paying attention, because there's an awful lot of activity there, and places like Brazil, Argentina, Chile are moving very fast.
Are there other good rankings we want to look at too?
Good ones?
Yeah. I don't mean that we rank well in, but they're well done.
Good, legitimate, solid.
Yeah, I think there are, and there's a whole host of them out there.
Well, much like over on the finance side, in the daily markets, there are a variety of ways and any number of financial entities out there that are making measurements of different things. And so I think what we want to do for ourselves is create, if you will, a bit of a matrix of, 4, 5, 6 very serious, very legitimate listings of, this is what FDI says, this is what so-and-so says, this is what so-and-so says. One, you'll see whether there's any level of consistency for either things we do well and now being recognized by 4 or 5 organizations, or things we do poorly being recognized potentially by 4 or 5 organizations. And it really helps, I think, to zero in on whether it's a legitimate weakness or a perceived weakness. Either way, it's something that we obviously need to work on.
Right.
So
At least
I'd like to see, a half a dozen
Okay.
of these kinds of things and see, where we are and where everybody else is.
Right, and the difference between perceived and legit is simply a matter of where we have to attack it. It's all real.
Yeah, there's no difference between perceived and legitimate. Okay. 12?
Okay, we'll just move on here. This is a graph that charts the number of business privileged tax filers. It excludes ones that had no liability for either gross or net income. So these are basically payers into the system. And I think the point I want to make about this one is that, and Rob, I know you can explain this kind of quick dip in the kind of 2000 area, which is a sort of, I think, a technical change in regulations.
Yeah, change in the law.
But if you just go from 2002 to 2009, which is when this data was compiled, they're the same number. It's about 83,000 filers. And I would say that, okay, the recession starts late 07, early 08, starts going down. No surprise that there's a going down, preceded by several years of modest but steady growth in those numbers. This isn't a precise measure, that you can use in a very detailed way, but I think it is an indicator of people who are creating businesses and trying to make a go of things in the city. And this is all both big and small. The fact that it's now the same as it was, or in 09, it was the same as it was in 02, to me is not a good indicator.
Yeah, one technical thing, I would probably look at it a little differently and include filers who don't have liability, because of things like what happened with the hobby tax, and if we do other things to allow fewer people to pay, you could actually see fewer people in this category but still see growth in business.
Probably what we ought to do is add another line to cover that, because I think that's addressing a very particular situation worth addressing, but I want to make sure we sort of also keep our eye on the payers.
Yeah.
All right, so you'll come back with this one and have 2 lines. One represents just the total of all filers. Do we have, I know we actually won't have hard numbers for another couple months. Do we have any idea what 2010 will look like?
We will know after the end of October because the bills of extension filings are not due until October 15th.
Do you have a sense at the moment?
So I couldn't tell you, I don't know if people follow extensions of the federal government.
Do we know whether other cities are
Is that you
seeing?
can't tell me, or is that you won't tell me?
That's not confidential.
He can't tell you, but he might not later in the year.
Right, I understand. There's 9 out of 10 questions I ask you, you usually tell me.
Hey, 1 out of 10 you answer?
You're right. You better talk to Rob about that.
You gave me key.
Name and address, exactly.
And then showed me his badge.
Any other questions?
Do we know whether this is happening in other cities as well?
I don't know what other cities' graphs look like. I guarantee you that in the last couple of years, their graphs have also gone down. I mean, this is
They probably
part
all
of the
went up
picture.
from 2 to 7.
They probably all went up,
and-
yeah,
and then-
our two only picked because of a regulatory change that
Right.
accounts for a blip back there, but they all probably show either steady growth or in some places, very high levels of growth and then probably a very high level of fall off as well.
To your point though, Rich, it is an important comparative metric, so we're trying to figure out what a good way of comparing sort of across cities is, whether it's a per capita number or a percentage change number, and then trying to compare that in a way that's consistent across.
Right, and not a lot of cities
Right.
have the business tax in the way we do, so
So
they
you
won't
might
have
compare
filers.
Detroit like the only city you can compare with.
So we'd have to
We
find
look
someone
really
good.
good, though.
Comparable figures.
Yeah, we look good compared to Detroit, but
But I think, again, these are all approximate measures, but based on a belief that if we have more businesses being created, we also may have more businesses that fail, but at least more businesses created suggests that more jobs are being produced, even if they're tiny little businesses. On average, it's got to be better. So we want to be tracking this one carefully.
13?
This next slide is a summary that actually the slides after it get into detail, but, we have this campaign, Smart City, Smart Choice, and we've simply isolated 3 that we're going to look at in a little more detail about government and its operations, the location itself and its physical characteristics, and the people. We'll just do that sort of one by one as we move along. And I'm going to, in a second, Rob, turn this slide over to you to sort of summarize where we are on a number of the tax issues. But I wanted to precede it by saying, because the tax issues come up all the time, and I was thinking back to my own life, 22 years as a managing partner of a business in Philadelphia, and remembering, I think accurately, I hope, that personal income taxes and business taxes never influenced one business decision we made. And I'm not saying that to suggest that taxes are not an
Okay,
issue.
next slide.
Nice try. Yeah, that is a nice try. I'm not saying that to suggest it wasn't an issue. I'm not suggesting that we didn't grumble about it. We grumbled plenty and fretted plenty about it. But it didn't change our basic decision-making about our business. So I don't want to suggest that that's a story that has universal appeal. Plenty of businesses make decisions on all kinds of hard economics, including tax policy. In our case, an architectural firm, it never did, ever. There were many more important things about where we were and why we were there that were generators of our business decisions.
Well, I mean, I think that's a part of the place argument, but on the other hand, every opportunity we have to even take the opportunity to make that argument or make a case about that argument, we should be, doing all that we can to still be a low-tax environment.